Good morning, everyone. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, madam.
Okay. So are there any other students to come? So I think only 12 or 11 students are here. Can you please rename with your name? Okay, I think students are joining still. Let's wait another 2 minutes and then start the lecture.
Recording in progress.
Okay, now let's start. So I think before starting the lecture, I think I have delivered your first lecture for this subject before. So I don't think you need an introduction about me, but I'll tell a little bit about myself. So I'm Purnima Gamage, and I'm a lecturer attached to the Department of International Business, Faculty of Management and Finance, University of Colombo. So I think I delivered Unit 1 for you, Unit 1 and some sessions in that. So today I will cover Unit 5, right? So under this Unit 5, I will be covering up Session 20 about global business strategy, and then Session 21 about market entry and expansion, Session 22 about cross-cultural management, 23 about international negotiations and relationships, and finally, Session 24, which is crisis management and business continuity. Right? So that's the plan for today. And we will conduct the lecture till 12 o'clock. Right? And I will give you a break in between. Do you all need a break in between? Yes? Hello, why no one's talking? Yes? Normally in the online lecture, do you get breaks in between? Okay. Yes. All right. Right. So I'll give you a very small break around like 10:30 something, right? Let's see how the sessions goes, and then I'll give you a break in between. So this is the plan for today. And if you have any questions, please raise them. You can unmute and you can raise your questions, and also you can use the chat box as well. And I prefer if you can unmute yourself and talk, right? Because then this will be more of an interactive session. Otherwise, I will be talking nonstop, and then yes, so to be more interactive, so it's better if you can unmute and talk, right? And do not mind about the language, right? If you have any questions, you can raise them in Sinhala as well. That's completely fine. All right. So then let's go ahead with the first session, which is global business strategy, right? Now let's see what do you mean by a global strategy, right? So here the definition says a global strategy is a strategy that a company develops to expand it into global market, right? So most of the companies in the recent days, so they are expanding into the global market, right? So when companies go into the global market, when companies go into other countries, right? So they need a global strategy. So that strategy that a particular company develops when they expand their company to the global market is what you call the global strategy, right? Now the big question is, why do they need a global strategy? Why companies need a global strategy, right? So global strategy is simply a strategy that they do to expand it to other countries or to the global market. But the question is, why do we need a global strategy, right? So one reason is we need a global strategy is because companies, they need to secure a competitive advantage, right? Because we are talking about international organizations here, right? So organizations, whether it is a local organization or whether it is a global organization, they need to ensure that they have a competitive advantage. What is a competitive advantage? Can someone tell me what is a competitive advantage is? Yes? I don't need a formal definition, just what it is. What is competitive advantage?
Some unique talents we have what others don't have, or some unique thing we have.
Yes, thank you, Yasmin. So that is it. Competitive advantage means what you're doing, right, better than the others, right? In terms of the business context, how your company is doing better than the other competitors, right? So in almost every industry, there are companies who stand out. Why? Because they have secured a competitive advantage. So why companies need to have a global business strategy is one thing, is to secure a competitive advantage. How? Now in an industry, companies can attract more customers and they can build strong brand loyalty when they have, let's say, cost advantage, right? So in the industry, if your company is company A, so your company A is having a cost advantage with the competitors, right? So that means when you have a cost advantage, then you already have a competitive advantage with you. Now, for example, let me say a lot of companies these days, they are going to China. Why? Because their labor cost is low. Their manufacturing cost is very low. So when their manufacturing cost is low, meaning they have a cost advantage. They have the low cost advantage. So this cost advantage is a competitive advantage for that particular company in the industry, right? So why do companies need a global business strategy? One thing is to secure a competitive advantage, right? If they don't go global or if they don't explore other countries, they would have missed China with low manufacturing cost, right? So that is the first reason for securing competitive advantage. I hope you're taking down notes. The second one is to balance risks. Balancing risks now, when you confined as a company to a one particular country, what are the consequences? Because if you depend only on one country, right, what happens? There's a big risk, right? It's because you're only depending on one particular country only. So in order to diversify your risks, what companies are doing these days are they are going to the global market by building up global strategies, right? So for example, Unilever, right? So Unilever, they originated in India and then now even they operate in Sri Lanka and in other countries. Now, why do they diversify their risk? Now, when you take Unilever, there are several products as well. They have personal care products, they have baby care products, right? So why do they diversify their product portfolio? Is to balance the risk, right? Now, Prima Noodles, they have operations in India and they have operations in other countries as well. Why? Because they want to balance out their risk, or they want to basically reduce their risk by not depending on one particular country. So why do we need a global strategy, or simply why do we need to go global? First thing, to get a competitive advantage. Second thing, to balance the risk, right? And the third thing is that, so why do we need to go global? Is because in every country, the cultural differences are very prominent, right? Now, let's say, hypothetically, let's say all the countries have the same culture. There's nothing different. We all dress the same. We all eat the same. We all have the same education, right? So if there are any cultural differences, right, then your global business strategy is very simple. But why this is getting complicated is because in every country, there are different cultural diversity, right? So there's a cultural diversity. So in order to navigate these cultural differences, right, companies need to come up with a global business strategy. Now, for example, India, now you all know the very popular or the common example that we know is McDonald's. When they entered into India, they saw that Indians, they don't eat beef, right? And then they don't eat pork. So because of their religious beliefs, right? So because of that, they introduced new varieties in their menu, right? The Maharaja burger, the Mac Aloo Tikki burger. So likewise, they customize their menu offerings. Why? Because they identified that the Indian culture is different. So why do we need global business strategies? First thing, to get a competitive advantage. Second thing, to balance out the risk. Thirdly, to navigate through the cultural differences. Are those 3 points clear?
Yes, Miss.
Okay, great. If I'm going fast or if my explanation is not enough, please do let me know even from message in the chat box, then I'll pause and explain it slowly. Okay. Right. So far we discussed what is a global strategy. Global strategy means strategy that a certain company develops, right, to expand it to the global market, right? So why do we need a global business strategy? To get competitive advantage, to balance out risk, and to navigate through cultural difference. Of course, there are other reasons as well, but I'm telling you 3 prominent reasons. Okay. Moving ahead. Have you seen this framework before? Have you come across this framework before? Yes? Yes, Shamodya, have you come across this framework before?
Yes, madam.
Okay, great. So then you all have a certain idea. So let's see whether what you know is the same as what I'm explaining. So this framework, we call it the integration responsiveness framework, right? Let me take a pen. Right. So this is what you call the integration responsive framework, right? So I'm putting just the notations to save time, right? So what is this framework called? This is the integration responsiveness framework. Why do we call this integration responsiveness framework? As you can see in the framework itself, there are two axes. So here in the x-axis, we have the local responsiveness, and then in the y-axis, we have the global integration, right? So because of these two criterion, we call this framework as integration responsiveness framework. All right. Okay, now let's see what are these two criterion. So who introduced this? So this integration responsiveness framework was introduced by two scholars, Christopher Bartlett and Sumantra Ghoshal. So we call it an Bartlett and Ghoshal's framework as well, right? So if someone wants to take notes, this framework was developed by Bartlett and Ghoshal. Let me put it in the chat box for you, then it's easier. Okay, so this is the article that this model was extracted from, Bartlett and Ghoshal, right? So if you see the name Integration Responsive Framework, and also sometimes it can be Bartlett and Ghoshal's framework as well, right? So now let's see what are these two criterions first in order to understand these four concepts. Now, what do you mean by global integration, right? So global integration means the extent or the degree to which a particular company standardizes its operations, right? The degree to which a particular company standardizes its operations. What do you mean by standardization? Mukadda standardization. Okay, by the way, are there any students who do not understand Sinhala here? Can you please raise your hand? Who do not understand Sinhala? Okay, all right. And I can talk in Sinhala as well. So, what do you mean by standardization? Standardization කියන්න මොකක්ද? Tell it in your own words. It's okay if it's wrong. මොකක්ද standardization කියලා කියන්නේ? මම එකට තවත් වචනයක් කියන්න ඔයගලන්ට මතක් වෙයි, customization. We say standardization, customization. What is standardization? Any idea, Bhagya? Yes? Yasmin, do you have any idea?
Tailoring the strategy according to the needs.
According to the needs.
Needs, yeah, or the changes that we need to make according to what is required.
For what? For each company?
For the survival of the company, or like to continue our business, something like that.
I think you're somewhat there. So basically, there are two concepts here, standardization and customization. What do you mean by standardization? Standardization means you give the same product that you give in Sri Lanka to India as well, to Europe as well, to USA as well, right? So basically, you give the same products and you have the same operations globally, right? You don't change your 4Ps, right? You don't change your 4Ps, you give the same product, you give the same operations. That is what you call standardization, right? Now, if you take the Coca-Cola flavor, it's same everywhere, right? And if you take the KFC chicken flavor, it's same everywhere. So that is standardization, right? You have consistency or you have uniformity in what you give to the world. And on the other hand, the opposite is customization. Customization means, now earlier I told, no, now why do we need a global strategy? Because we have to navigate through cultural differences, because every country is different. හැම රටක්ම වෙනස්. ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ cultures වෙනස්, right? Their preferences are different. Their needs are different. So to cater into different cultural needs, right, we customize our product offering. So we give one product to Sri Lanka and we give another product to USA, right? Now, for example, previously I told the McDonald's example. So for Sri Lanka, McDonald's has customized their product by introducing, then අපේ culture කනුව අපි කන්නේ ගොඩක්ම rice and curry. So they introduced rice and curry options, right? And then in India, based on their culture, they introduced Maharaja burger, right? Vegetarian options. So likewise, if a certain company changes or customize their products operations for piece, then that is what you call customization. Is it clear? Just simply remember, same product everywhere, standardization. Different products in other countries, customization. Are those concepts clear? ඒ concepts දෙක පැහැදිලිද? Yes. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, right. So now keep those concepts in mind, right? Then let's go ahead and talk about this. This integration means what I call the standardization or the level of standardization. So integration means the degree to which a particular company standardizes its operations, whether the level of standardization is high or whether those standardization is low. So standardization high means they give the same product everywhere, same marketing everywhere. And the standardization low means they do not give the same product. They are customizing it. So responsiveness, that is integration. Local responsiveness කියලා කියන්නේ the degree to which a company customizes its operations or degree to which a company adapts its operation based on the specific needs of the local market. I'll tell the definition again. Local responsiveness means the degree to which a company customizes its operations or adapts its operation to cater into specific local markets. Making අපි කියන්නේ කොච්චර level of customization we do. The level of customization, is it low? The level of customization, is it high? Level of customization high කියලා කියන්නේ, for each and every country, they give an entirely different product. They do entirely different marketing practices, right? So based on the level of standardization, customization, we develop this model. Are those two criteria now? For the local responsiveness, I'll give you an example. Now the company Toyota, right? They are very good at this local responsiveness or customization. Why? Because when Toyota is manufacturing cars to Saudi Arabia, you know, Saudi Arabia is a very, they have a very hot climate, right? So when they are manufacturing their Toyota vehicles for the Saudi Arabian market, they have to make sure that the air conditioning systems works better with the extreme heat, because that's not the heat that we have in Sri Lanka, right? So this company has to make sure in Saudi Arabia, in all the Middle Eastern countries, since there's very extreme heat, hot climate, their cars, their air conditioning systems are, you know, working better with that extreme heat. Now, let me take another example in Canada. So when Toyota is manufacturing cars for the Canadian market, you know, Canada is a very, most of the time in the year, it's very cold, right? So when Toyota company manufactures vehicles for the Canadian market, they have to make sure that they have features like heated seats, or they have better insulation to handle the snow, because it's freezing, it's minus in Canada, right? So they have to make sure that they have those features in the Canadian market vehicles. So likewise, that is an example for customization. So you have to decide whether that customization is high or whether that customization is low. Are these two criterions clear for you? May criterions deka පැහැදිලිද?
Yes, madam.
Okay, right. So please listen to this very carefully, okay? Otherwise, if you lost in some areas, since I'm talking about, as a process, මේ මුලින් ඕගලන්ට පොඩ්ඩක් ඔයගලන් concentration එක නැති වුණොත් එහෙම අන්තිමේදී පොඩ්ඩක් අමාරු වෙයි. මොකද දැන් මම මුලින්ම කතා කරේ මොනවාද මේ criterions දෙක කියලා. දැන් අපි බලමු මොනවාද මේ quadrants හතර. Right? So the first one, let's take this one, standardization strategy. Now in standardization strategy, you can see the global integration is high or low. Is the global integration high or low?
High.
High. Responsiveness, local responsiveness, is it high or low?
Low. Low.
Exactly. So here the integration is high, local responsiveness is low, right? දැන් හිතන්න. Integration එක high කියලා කියන්නේ standardization එක වැඩි. Local responsiveness එක අඩුයි කියන්නේ customization එක අඩුයි, right? So standardization strategy means that they have consistency and uniformity across international markets or across different countries. They have consistency and they have uniformity. Why? Because the standardization is high. So they give the same product, same offer of operation in every country, right? Now let me give you an example. KFC, right? KFC, right? KFC. So in KFC, it's a fast food chain, as you already know. So they have standardized their outlets. Now, when you see the outlet structure, the layout of the store, it's same everywhere in all the countries. And if you take the famous fried chicken recipe, it's also same in all the locations. Regardless of all the countries, they have the same fried chicken everywhere. So that is an example for standardization, right? So they have the same product everywhere. So standardization means they have high global integration and they have low local responsiveness, meaning they have consistency. They give the same product everywhere. Is the standardization concept clear?
Yes, miss.
Is it clear?
Miss, yes. And
Okay.
can't we take
Moving
Coca-Cola for
forward,
this?
let's go to, yes.
Madam, excuse me. Is Coca-Cola also product comes under standardization strategy?
Exactly. Standardization, yes, of course, Coca-Cola. But we cannot say they have this entirely standardization strategy, because actually this Coca-Cola company is, because earlier we used to give examples with the Coca-Cola, because we believe that the Coca-Cola taste, it's same everywhere, right? Even if you go to Japan, even if you go to Sri Lanka, India, it's the same thing. But you already know, recently they have come up with different versions. Have you seen? Like for particular countries, they have come up with different versions, like, some herbal versions in Japan. So likewise, for different countries, they have done some level of customization as well. Now, anyhow, the original product is there, but some level of customization is there. So we can't say that entirely they are practicing standardization, they have little bit of customization as well, right? So they
Okay,
actually
ma'am.
mix of standardization and customization. Because
Okay.
now, if you take like 10 years or earlier, they had the standardization practice. But when you move ahead with the competitors, now there are a lot of frizzy drinks in the market now. Now with the competition, they have no option but to customize, because otherwise it's difficult to sustain in the market, right? Because in Coca-Cola, they have so many allegations, it's not healthy and it's creating a lot of health risk, right? So because of that, they came up with Coke Zero. So likewise, with the times change, they are changing.
Okay.
Right. Is it clear, Yasmin?
Yes, madam. Thank
Oh,
you.
great. Right. They change their present modification for retaining the market. Exactly. Yes. 622401973. Yes. Can you please rename with your name? I think I have met you all earlier as well, so I can remember you all. So can you please rename with your name? Then it's easier for us to do this lecture. Right. Hari. Then standardization strategy ka danda. Global integration වැඩි, local responsiveness අඩුයි. They give the same product everywhere, right? Now let's go to the second one, right? The second one, let's say this one, multi-domestic strategy. Multi-domestic strategy means they are low in global integration, right? But their local responsiveness is very high, right? So here we can say a company that is practicing standardization. Now this company, what are they practicing? Is it standardization or customization?
Customization.
Customization, right? Why? Because their local responsiveness is very high. Their standardization is very low. Customization is very high, right? So what do you mean by customization? They adapt their products, services, operations for each of the local market, right? So for each individual local market, they change their product, services, and operations, or they adapt according to each local market, right? So that is a multi-domestic strategy where they adapt product, services, operations to meet the specific needs of the local market, right? Now let me give you an example. Microsoft, right? Microsoft. So Microsoft, they have localization strategy. Why? Because when you take their product offerings like Windows and Office, so they have language options for different countries, right? And they have specific user preferences for different regions as well, right? So they have adapted their products according to the specific local market. And another example that I told before is McDonald's. They are changing according to the specific market, right? They have, for in Sri Lanka, as you can see, there are so many customized product offerings that they introduce. Unfortunately, we don't have it right now, right? So that is multi-domestic strategy. And even in Pizza Hut, as you know, we have localized product offerings, right? So that is multi-domestic strategy. And then let's go to the other one, this one, transnational strategy. Transnational strategy means the integration is it high or low?
High.
High. What about the responsiveness?
High.
That is also high. So now there's a problem. දැන් මෙතන නම් හරිම පැහැදිලි standardization එක වැඩි. මෙතනත් හරිම clear customization එක වැඩි. හරිද? දැන් මෙතන standardization එකත් වැඩි, customization එකත් වැඩි. Right? What is that? So they are having both of these strategies now. Exactly. That's the whole point in transnational strategy. So transnational strategy means they integrate global operations or they standardize global operations for efficiency, right? Because standardization is very easy for the company, no? මොකද දැන් එක රටින් රටට ඔයා මේ product offerings වෙනස් කරනවා කියලා කියන්නේ it's a big cost, right? You have to incur a lot of time and cost. But if you give the same product to each and every country, right, it's beneficial for the company, no? Right? And their efficiency is also increasing, right? Because they have the same supply chain. But if you're creating a new product, of course, you have to come up with a new production process. So the efficiency is slow. So with the transnational strategy, we say we can integrate global operations for efficiency while also adapting to the local market conditions. Let me tell it again. They operate or they integrate global operations for efficiency while also adapting to global market conditions. So they have both standardization and they have customization as well. Let me give you an example, Nestle, right? So Nestle, you know, they have this product Nescafe, right? So when you take the product Nescafe, right? Now Nestle sells this product Nescafe worldwide. They modify their flavor, packaging, marketing strategy, depending on the country, right? But when you actually take the taste of it, it's basically the same. But when you take the packaging, the marketing that you do, it differs. So there are, I think, in 2025, almost all the companies are transnational companies. Because even if you take Coca-Cola, they have the same product, but they customize marketing operations everywhere. Even in KFC, it's the same because now companies are changing because they have identified they have no option. In order to retain in the market, they have to do customization as well. So they have benefits of both ends of the world. So they have standardization and customization. And then the final one is export strategy, which means the standardization is also low and then the customization is also low, right? That means they have confined themselves or they are focusing on one particular country only. One particular country as in their own home country only, right? So let me give an example. Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson මොන products ද හදන්නේ? Harley Davidson?
Motorcycles.
Exactly, right? So they produce motorcycles, not motor vehicles, motorcycles, right? So their strategy is that they are primarily based in USA, right? And then they export their products to the global market with very minimal customization. So that is their export strategy. So standardization strategy means purely standardized product. For example, KFC. Multi-domestic strategy means purely customization like Microsoft, right? And then transnational strategy means they have both standardization and customization like Nestle. And export strategy means they have low customization and standardization, meaning Harley-Davidson company. So I wrote these examples as well. So please take notes. So then it's easier for you to remember these quadrants, right? Is it clear? Do you have any questions? Now it's the time. Any questions? Yes. Is it clear? Disanayaka, is
Yes, madam. Yes, madam, it's clear.
Okay, let's see. Disanayaka, what about you, Disanayaka? For Disanayaka giyada?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, right. So that is the integration responsiveness framework, right? Okay. Can you explain the transnational strategy, please? Sure. So transnational strategy means you have both customization and standardization both. Standardization උත් තියෙනවා, customization උත් තියෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ strategy එකේ සමහර components ඒගොල්ලන් එක වගේම තමයි හැම රටටම කරන්නේ. ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ strategy එකේ සමහර components තියෙනවා එක එක රටවල් වලට change කරන, customize කරන. මම example එකක් විදියට දුන්නේ Nestle, right? Nestle එකේ මේ Nescafe කියන brand එක, right? The taste is same everywhere. එතකොට standardization එක වැඩි. Same product එක තමයි දෙන්නේ. හැබැයි අපි ගත්තොත් මේගොල්ලන්ගේ customization එකත් වැඩි. මොකද ඒගොල්ලන් එක එක රටවලට ගියාම මේ Nescafe කියන product එක market කරන විදිය වෙනස්. Right? And their packaging is different. So there's both standardization and customization as well. දෙකම තියෙනවා. Right? දැන් මර කලින් කිව්වා all the companies are also belonging to this transnational strategy. They have both standardization and customization as well. Now let me take the Coca-Cola example. දැන් Coca-Cola කියන product එක, if you taste the Coca-Cola, it's same everywhere. එතකොට standardization වැඩි. ඒ වගේම තමයි Coca-Cola advertisements බලන්න. එක එක රටවල් වලට ඒගොල්ලන් එක එක advertisements තමයි තියෙන්නේ. එක එක marketing strategies තමයි තියෙන්නේ. Right? So දැන් මම මේ advertisement එකයි කියන්නේ මේ එකම language එකෙන් කරන්න ඕනේ කියන එක නෙමෙයි. Of course you understand, right? දැන් සිංහලෙන් මේ USA වල advertisement එකක් දාලා හරියන්නේ නැහැ. Of course the language can be different. But the marketing concept is the same. Right? එතකොට Coca-Cola, their concepts differ when it comes to different countries as well. Right? So that is a transnational strategy. Is it clear? The student to raise, Madhushika? Madhushika, is it clear? Okay. Right. So moving ahead, now you know this framework as well. Then, let me remove this. Okay. Right. Now, let's see. Formulating a global business strategy, what are the factors that you should keep in mind? Now, when you're creating a global business strategy, right, there are certain things or there are certain factors that are actually crucial when you create a strategy. What are those factors? The first one is you have to keep in mind the demand. So you need to have an understanding of what people in different places want to buy. මේ එක එක countries වල තියෙන demand එක ගැන ඔයගලන්ට idea එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. මොනවාද මේ එක එක රටවල් වල මිනිස්සු ඉල්ලන්නේ? What is their demand? Is it the same or is it different? Right? And you also have to see what is the market potential. Market potential එක බලන්න ඕනේ. ඒ කියන්නේ market potential කියලා කියන්නේ is there a good chance for this particular company to grow? මේ company එකට grow වෙන්න potential එකක් තියෙනවද? Right? Because let's say you go into an entirely different country and there's no market potential. Now, if you take Ukraine, now there's a war going on, right? So is there a point of you going into Ukraine and marketing a certain product? No, because the market potential is not there, right? We don't know whether the country will be there in 5 or 10 years later. So you have to see whether there's a market potential. Then the second one is when you're creating a business strategy, global business strategy, you have to consider the culture. දැන් මම කලින් උත් ගොඩාක් emphasize කරා මේ cultural differences කියන එක. එතකොට ඔයා මේ cultural differences ගැන හොඳ අවබෝධයක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ global marketing strategy එකකට. Because if you do not identify these cultural uniqueness or these differences properly, then you're in big trouble, right? So you have to do your own research about what these cultural differences are. And then the third one, you need to have an idea about the legal background, right? Because in every country, you know, they have their own set of rules. They have their own set of laws. හැම රටකම තියෙන laws rules වෙනස්. එතකොට ඔයා product එකක් අරගෙන ඒ රටකට යනකොට you need to have an idea about how these products are sold, right? If you break these rules, what are the consequences, right? දැන් example එකක් විදියට දැන් අපි ගත්තොත් එහෙම fuel companies නැත්නම් gas companies ගත්තොත් එහෙම when they are expanding internationally, they have to follow these very strict regulations. Why? Because, they have to keep in mind the environmental regulations, right? So they have different rules and regulations for these companies, right? දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපි ගත්තොත් එහෙම ලංකාවේ දැන් ඔයගොල්ලන් දැකලා තියෙනවද private මේ කෝච්චි තියෙනවා අපේ ලංකාවේ private railways. It's not there, no, right? Why? Because in our country, we have certain rules and regulations which restrict private sector in entering the railway industry, right? So likewise, when you're entering into a particular market or a country, you need to have an idea about their legal background, right? And then the fourth one is the competitive context. So you have to see who are your competitors. right? ඔයාගේ තරඟකාරයන් කවුද? ඔයාගේ competitors ලා කවුද? කියන එක ගැන ඔයාලට හොඳ idea එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ, right? දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපේ ලංකාවේ telecommunication industry ගත්තොත් එහෙම we have Dialog, we have Mobitel, right? And then we have Hutch, Airtel. So we need to know who are our competitors. Will these competitors be a threat to us, right? So you have to have an idea about that. ඊළඟට you need to have an idea about the social profile. මොකද මේ social profile කියලා කියන්නේ? Social profile කියලා කියන්නේ customers ලාගේ නැත්නම් market එකේ තියෙන demographics. මොකද මේ demographics කියලා කියන්නේ? In your market, the age of the population, the age of the target market, the preferences of the target market, the educational background. So you need to have an idea about the social profile. Or we call the demographics and the behavior, right? Because in different countries, they have different needs. They have different preferences. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපි ගත්තොත් එහෙම අපේ ලංකාවේ ඉන්න Gen Z population එකයි USA වල ඉන්න Gen Z population එකයි වෙනස්. එතකොට ඔයා product එකක් design කරනවා නම් මේ Gen Z customers ලට if you have the same product in Sri Lanka and USA, it might not work. Because even if it is the same demographic, even if the same characteristic or the same generation, their demographics might change, right? So you need to know their social profile as well. So these are the factors that you need to know. Is it clear? So do you have any other factors that you can add here? What else you need to focus on? Yes, what are the other factors that you need to focus on?
The technological conditions in every country.
Exactly. Good one. So we have to see how advanced are they in terms of technology, right? Now let's say your company is Tesla, right? You're thinking of coming to Sri Lanka. So you have to see whether the same technology can be used in Sri Lankan country as well, right? How easy is it to implement certain strategies in different countries? Of course, the technology. Yes. What else? Economic conditions. Yes. Right? So you have to see what is the economic status. Right? So those are the factors. So that concludes the first session on global business strategy. එතකොට මේ global business strategy එකේදී අපි කතා කරා මොකක්ද global business strategy එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ? ඇයි අපිට global business strategy එකක් ඕනේ? ඊට පස්සේ මේ integration responsiveness framework එකේ strategies 4 ගැන අපි කතා කරා. ඊට පස්සේ අපි කතා කරා what are the factors to be considered when we are formulating a global business strategy, right? Then we are moving on to the next session, which is the market entry and expansion. දැන් අපි කතා කරා global business strategy එකක් කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? ඒකක් හදන්න මොන වගේ factors ද අපි consider කරන්න ඕනේ? මොනවාද අපිට තියෙන strategies කියන එක ගැන අපි කතා කරා. දැන් අපි බලන්නේ කොහොමද අපි වෙන රටකට enter වෙන්නේ? Right? Market entry and expansion. So what do you mean by market entry? Market entry meaning a situation when an organization, when an organization expands its operation to other countries, right? Market entry means they are entering into other countries, right? Then මෙතනදී ඔයගොල්ලෝ මතක තියාගන්න ඕනේ key terms දෙකක් තියෙනවා. That is home country and host country. Do you know the difference between home country and host country? මොකක්ද මේ දෙකේ තියෙන වෙනස? Can someone explain? What is the difference between home country and host country? මොකක්ද ළමයි home country කියලා කියන්නේ? Yes, Akil, do you have any idea about that? Home country? මම කලින් පොඩ්ඩක් කිව්වා මේ home country කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා. මොකක්ද home country එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ? Home country, host country. කමන්නේ වැරදුනාට. Just share what you know.
Home country is where they initiate the business, like head
Okay.
office and everything.
Exactly, headquarters. Okay, good.
Yes.
Host country.
And is where they are taking their business to.
Exactly, that's simply it, right? So home country means where this particular company is based or where they have their headquarters. ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ headquarters තියෙන්නේ කොහෙද? Or where they started the business, right? Or where their main operations are. Now, if you take Sparsilon, right? Their headquarters is in Sri Lanka. And host country කියලා කියන්නේ the country or the nation where this company expand its business or where they are going next, right? Now, for example, you know, Sparsilon is there in Dubai as well. So their host country is in Dubai, right? So home country means the country where the headquarters is. Host country means the country where they are expanding its operation. අපි මේකට කියනවා මේ subsidiary country කියලා, right? So that is home country and host country. So what do you mean by market entry when an organization expands into other countries? When an organization expands the operations from the home country to different host countries as well, right? Can you give me an example for this home country and host country? Home country, host country example එකක් මට කියන්න බලන්න එක company එකක example එකක්.
Nestle.
Yes, can you give me the countries?
Home country is Switzerland. Host country is
Okay.
India.
India, exactly, right? So there are so many host countries for Nestle, even Sri Lanka, right? Even in other countries as well, right? So that is home country and host country. Very good. So now let's see, why don't they enter into host countries? ඇයි මේ host countries වලට යන්නේ? මොකද්ද මේ host countries වලට යන එකේ තියෙන අරමුණු, objectives මොනවාද? පළවෙනි එක තමයි to seek a market or to expand their market. Because when you take only the Sri Lankan market, it's very limited, right? The Sri Lankan market කියලා කියන්නේ 20 million customers විතරයිනේ. But when you go into the USA market, it's very big. Indian market, even bigger. Chinese market, even bigger. So when you go into other host countries, you have lot of customers, lot of new customers, right? So to expand it to new markets or to go and tap into new customers, you go into other host countries. And the second reason is that in finding resources, right? So to find essential raw materials, energy, or other natural resources that are available in foreign market. Now, certain natural resources might not be available in your home country. ඔයාගේ headquarters එක තියෙන රටේ ඒ natural resource එක නැති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට ඒ natural resource එක තියෙන දැන් for example, let's say crude oil, it's available in Middle Eastern countries. So if you're starting up a company based on crude oil, then you have to go into those Middle Eastern countries as well. So you are entering into different markets to find natural resources as well. And then for efficiency, the සමහරක් වෙලාවට natural resources උත් තියෙනවා. හැබැයි you need to find efficiency in other countries. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් අපි ගත්තොත් එමේ USA වලත් labor ඉන්නවා. ශ්‍රී ලංකාව වලත් labor ඉන්නවා. Right? Resources are there. But when you compare the labor cost in USA and labor cost in Sri Lanka, it's different. අපේ ලංකාවේ labor cost එක අඩුයි. In China, the labor cost is low, right? So companies might be going into different other countries to lower their cost for efficiency, right? Skills, cost advantage in the foreign market. So that's why a lot of big companies have set up their facilities in China, right? Apple company, they have their manufacturing facilities in China, right? A lot of other companies, Nike, Adidas, they have their operations in Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, China. Why? Because their cost is low. Primarily, their labor cost, right? So for efficiency also, people go to other countries. And to enhance capabilities, right? So sometimes companies go to other countries to get new technology. Sometimes, as you mentioned earlier as well, sometimes the technology is not available in your country, but it's very developed in another country, right? So you go into that other countries for those capabilities. And then finally, why do you go to other countries? To reduce the risk. එක මං මුලින්ම කිව්වා, right? So to now, when it comes to economic risk, it's very big, right? So you can't primarily depend on one market. Then මෙච්චර කාලයකට දැන් ඉතාමත් ඒක consequences experience කරනවා. We had an economic crisis after COVID-19, right? So with this economic crisis, if you depend only on the Sri Lankan market, then you can't expect good amount of profits, right? So you need to balance out your risks by going into other markets as well, right? So that is the other reason. So why do we go into other countries? To find new markets, to find new resources, to find good efficiency, right? To find new capabilities and to balance out or to reduce risks. Is it clear? Are you all with me still? Or are you all still hungry? Yes, is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Right. Moving ahead, Hari. Clear. Okay. දැන් අපි කතා කරා මොකද්ද market entry එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ? ඇයි අපි එක එක markets වලට enter වෙන්න ඕනේ? Right? What are the entry objectives? Then අපි කතා කරන්නේ, now when you are going into different markets, there are two key decisions that you have to make. ඔයා market එකකට යනකොට ඔයා ගන්න ඕනේ ප්‍රධානම තීරණ දෙකක් තියෙනවා. එකක් තමයි, right, when to enter, right? මොන වෙලාවෙද ඔයා මේ market එකට යන්න ඕනේ? දෙවෙනි key decision එක තමයි where to enter. කොහෙටද යන්නේ? මොන market එකටද යන්නේ? So these two questions are very important. Timing decisions, මොන වෙලාවෙද යන්නේ? Location decisions, කොහෙටද යන්නේ? These two are very important, right? Now let's go ahead and discuss the first one, timing decision. මොන වෙලාවෙද යන්නේ? ඒ කියන්නේ මොකද්ද මේ? When to enter. දැන් මෙතනදී කියන්නේ මේ timing decision කියලා කියන්නේ ඔයා එක ඉන්ඩස් දැන් අපි හිතමු එක කම්පැනි එකක් තියෙනවා ඒගොල්ලන්ට USA මාකට් එකට යන්න ඕනේ. එතකොට USA මාකට් එකට යනකොට ඔයාට යන්න පුළුවන් විදි දෙකක් තියෙනවා. right? එකක් තමයි sorry. One way is that you can be the first mover, right? You can be the first mover, or else you can be the late mover. First mover or the late mover. What do you mean by that? ඒ කියන්නේ USA වල තියෙන ඒ ඉන්ඩස්ට්‍රි එකට ඔයාට මුලින්ම යන්න පුළුවන්. අපි එකට කියනවා first mover advantage කියලා. ඔයාට මුලින්ම ඉන්ඩස්ට්‍රි එකට යන්න පුළුවන්. නැත්නම් ඔයාට ඉන්ඩස්ට්‍රි එකට යන්න පුළුවන් late mover advantage. ටිකක් පහු වෙලා මුලින්ම නෙමෙයි ටිකක් පහු වෙලා යන්න පුළුවන්. Late mover advantage. Now do you think what is better? First mover advantage එකද තියෙන්න ඕනේ? Late mover advantage එකද තියෙන්න ඕනේ company එකට? ඔයගොල්ලෝ මොකද හිතන්නේ? Do companies need to have the first mover advantage? Do they have to go first? Or do they need to go somewhat, after a delayed time period? Late mover advantage එකද තියෙන්න ඕනේ. What do you think? What do you think? Do companies need to have first mover advantage or late mover advantage? So Bhagya is saying it depends. What about others? නෑ මට කියන්න මොකක් හරි strategy එකක් කියලා first mover නම් ඇයි ඔයා එක කියන්නේ? Yes, Yasmin, what do you think?
I think it depends on the product what we are giving to the other country, madam. If it's a totally new product,
Okay.
definitely we'll have to think whether we all of a sudden are we going to introduce this to that country, and so I think it depends on the product what we are giving them.
Okay, it depends on the product, right? What about others? Okay, now let's take an example. අපි ගමු, there's a certain country, right? And in that country, so they are going with the let's say company Apple, right? So in that particular company X, particular country X, may X කියන country එකට යන්න Apple company, do they need to go first? Or do they let Samsung go settle in and then do they allow Apple to go? What do you think? Is first mover advantage or late mover advantage good for Apple? Yes, Madhushika, what do you think? Okay, aftermarket survey. Yes. දැන් මට කියන්න දැන් මම ඔයගලන්ට දැන් ඔයගලන් depends කියලා කිව්වනේ ඒකින්ද මම ඔයගලන්ට මේ මාකට් එකකුත් කිව්වා. right? Mobile phone market එක. Apple company. එතකොට මුලින් යන එකද හොඳ පහුවෙලා යන එකද හොඳ? මට කියන්න ඇයි ඒකට reasons කියලා. Oppo A15 එයාගේ ෆෝන් එකෙම රීනේම් කරලා තියෙන හින්දා අපි යාගෙන් හමු. Oppo A15 කියන්න බලන්න. Yes. Come on students talk. ඒ කියන්නේ මේකේ there's no right answer. ඒකින්ද ඔයගලන් you have to give your opinions, views.
first mover advantage එක.
First mover advantage. ඇයි මේ first mover advantage කියලා කියන්නේ?
First movers can achieve a significant brand recognition. They can take market leadership.
So nobody has used phones before. So when you go first, then they have the brand recognition. Right. Very good point. Yes. What about others? කාරුක යපරත්ත මොකක්ද හිතන්නේ? Yes, Taruka, what do you think?
මුලින්ම ගියොත් එයාලට ඒ ප්‍රොඩක්ට් එක ගැන ලොයල්ටි එකක් ඇති කරගෙන වැඩි වෙළඳපොළ කොටසක් අත් කරගන්න පුළුවන්.
Recording stopped.
I'm sorry, I locked out from the meeting. කාටද host ගිහලා තියෙන්නේ? අභාග්‍ය. ඔයාට තමයි host ගිහලා තියෙන්නේ. Can you make me the host? භාග්‍ය, ඔයාට තමයි host option එක ගිහලා තියෙන්නේ. Can you make me the host? මගේ නම ඉස්සරහා ඇති මොකක් හරි make me host හරි මොකක් හරි එකක්. භාග්‍ය, ඔයා log වෙලා ඉන්නේ phone එකෙන්ද laptop එකෙන්ද? භාග්‍ය පෙරේරා. හරි. ඒකේ පොඩ්ඩක් බලන්න ඔයාගේ participant list එකට ගියාම මගේ නම ඉස්සරහා මොකක් හරි dots තුනක් හරි mo කියලා හරි මොකක් හරි ඇතිනේ. ඔව් ඒක කරලා ඊට පස්සේ make host හරි මොකක් හරි එකක් ඇති. ඒක click කරන්න. Right. Okay. Thank you, Bhagya. Right. So I was talking about this first move and late move advantage, no? Right. So first mover advantage, of course, there are benefits from first mover because people are curious about what this product is. So they are getting it, right? And there's an advantage in late mover as well. Why? Because now late mover means people know about this product as well already. We can observe other companies' failure points and be the success. Exactly, Nipuna, right? So late mover advantage එකේ තියෙන වාසිය තමයි අර කලින් companies first mover companies ඇවිල්ලා ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ failures තියෙනවානේ. ඒ failures එක හදාගෙන ඒගොල්ලන්ට late mover advantage එක ගන්න පුළුවන්. Right? So of course, as you mentioned, it depends on the industry. Both first mover late mover advantage works. එතකොට අපි මුලින්ම ගන්න ඕනේ තීරණය තමයි මේ කොයි වෙලාවෙද එන්නේ කියන එක. මුලින්මද මාකට් එකට එන්න ඕනේ නැත්නම් පොඩ්ඩක් පරක්කු වෙලාද first move or late move advantage timing decision ඊළඟට අපි බලන්න ඕනේ මේ location decision එක location decision කියලා කියන්නේ අපි මොන වගේ රටකටද යන්නේ right now when you take now if you're let's say if you're deciding to open up a clothing store සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ඔය fashion වලට ගොඩාක්ම ප්‍රසිද්ධ මොන වගේ රටවල්ද and you take fashion and you know all these fashion related මොන වගේ රටවල්ද ගොඩක් ප්‍රසිද්ධ
European countries?
exactly European countries like Italy right so Paris so all these countries so Italy specifically they are into you know fashion industry so because of that they have skilled workers right they have good supply chains so you have to understand to which country are you going into right and then සමහර markets ඉන්න පුළුවන් ඒවා saturated markets කියලා කියන්නේ already කවුරු හරි ඇවිල්ලා ඒ customers ලට cater කරලා ඉවරයි එතකොට ඔයා අලුතෙන් ඇවිල්ලා customers ලා හොයාගන්න අමාරුයි because they are already the market is saturated so you have to consider when to enter and where to enter as well දැන් කොහොමද මේ market entry කරන්න පුළුවන් නැත්නම් what are the market entry strategies so write down the first strategy is exporting right you can go into the market by exporting by selling your products and products to a particular foreign country right so one way is that exporting කියනකොට risk එක ගොඩක් අඩුයි මොකද ඔයා export කරනවා විතරයි ඔයාගේ product එක sell කරනවා විතරයි අනිත් රටකට ඔයා ගිහිල්ලා ඒ රටකට ගිහිල්ලා ඔයාගේ subsidiary එකක් දාගෙන එච්චර ලොකු දේවල් කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ ඔයාට product එක sell කරන්න විතරයි තියෙන්නේ ඔයාගේ රටේ ඉඳලා so that's the first strategy exporting දෙවැනි එක තමයි licensing what do you mean by licensing can you give an example for licensing can you give an example for licensing මොකද්ද licensing කියලා කියන්නේ අපි කියනවා international licensing කියලා licensing means a particular company they grant a certain other company the right to use their intellectual property like their patent, their trademark, their technology, right? In exchange for a particular fee. ඒ කියන්නේ එක company එකක් අපි කියන licensor තව company එකක් licensee ට දෙනවා මේ license මොකක් හරි established company එකක intellectual property. ඒ කියන්නේ ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ patent rights වෙන්න පුළුවන්, trademarks වෙන්න පුළුවන්, technology එක වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට licensee ට මේ ටික දුන්නහම in return licensee will give you a licensing fee නැත්නම් royalties මොන හරි payment එකකට තමයි දෙන්නේ for example the company Disney හරිද message එක KFC Pizza Hut KFC Pizza Hut is actually a franchise මම ඊළඟට කතා කරනවා it's not licensing right මම කියන්නම් ඇයි වෙනස් කියලා now for licensing the most famous example is Disney the Disney company එක මොකද්ද කරන්නේ ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ patent right ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ trademark එක ඒගොල්ලන් අනිත් companies වලට දෙනවා මොන වගේ companies ද toy manufacturing companies එතකොට මේ toy manufacturing companies වල license ඊළට මොකද්ද කරන්න පුළුවන් ඒගොල්ලන් අර Disney trademark එක අරගෙන ඒගොල්ලන් toys හදලා විකුණනවා එතකොට මේ Disney mark එක trademark එක patent එක ගත්තට they have to pay a certain fee to the Disney company so there are toy manufacturers who get Disney and there's clothing manufacturers who get Disney products Disney trademark so that is licensing right is licensing clear licensing පැහැදිලිද මං කියපු එක ළමයි කතා කරන්නකෝ I don't know whether you all are in the meeting or not.
Yes,
Yes,
madam.
is it clear?
Yes, madam.
Okay. Right. Okay. So first one is exporting. Second one is licensing. Third one, දැන් මම export example එකක් කියන්න Dilma. අපේ Dilma products export කරනවා අනිත් රටවල් වලට. Licensing Disney. Third one is franchising. දැන් ඔය නිපුණ කිව්වා වගේ for example KFC. මොකද්ද මේ franchising කියලා කියන්නේ? Franchising means a company අපි කියමු franchisor, right? Franchisor grant the rights to another party. අපි යාට කියනවා franchisee කියලා. Grant rights to another party to operate its business model, use its brand, distribute its products in a foreign market. දැන් මෙතන franchising කියන්නේ licensing වලට වැඩිය ගොඩාක් broad strategy එකක්. මොකද දැන් licensing වල දෙන්නේ ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ trademark එක විතරයිනේ, patent එක විතරයිනේ. මේ franchising වල ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ entire business model එකම දෙනවා. Right? ඒ කියන්නේ ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ මේ company එකේ store එකේ layout එක කොහොමද වෙන්න ඕනේ? ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ products කොහොමද වෙන්න ඕනේ? distribution එක කොහොමද වෙන්න ඕනේ? For example, KFC. Now, if you take the KFC layout, the McDonald's layout, it's the same everywhere, right? And if you take the product categories, right? So even the raw materials, the McDonald's, the raw materials, they are bringing from the franchisor. So they give the entire business model. ඒකට තමයි කියන්නේ franchising කියලා. So what is franchising? Where a company grants its entire business model or grant the rights to operate its entire business model to another company. And in return, franchisee has to pay a fee. Right? That is what you call franchising. Then Pizza Hut, McDonald's, KFC මේ ඔක්කොම operate කරන්නේ මේ franchising කියන business model එකට. Right? Then ඔයගොල්ලන් දන්නවද ඇයි McDonald's ලංකාවෙන් ගියේ කියලා? McDonald's ලංකාවේ නතර කරන්න උනේ ඇයි කියලා දන්නවද? Any idea? Any idea why McDonald's is no longer in Sri Lanka?
Quality එක fail නිසා.
Quality එක fail හින්දා. කවුද quality එක fail කරේ? දැන් quality එක fail නම් ඉතින් එතකොට දැන් McDonald's මේ එහෙනම් අනිත් රටවල්වලත් වහන්න ඕනේ. ඇයි අපි ලංකාව විතරක් වැහුවේ? because ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ තියෙන franchise model එකක්. දැන් ලංකාවේ franchisee විදියට හිටියේ කවුද? මොන company එකද? ලංකාවේ franchisee කවුද McDonald's වල? Yes? Abans. Right? Abans තමයි franchisee. එතකොට Abans තමයි so they got the franchising model of McDonald's, right? And they were operating in Sri Lanka. ඊට පස්සේ මොකක්ද උනේ? As she correctly mentioned, franchisor noticed that the quality is low and they don't maintain the same standard in Sri Lanka. එතකොට දැන් franchisor ට මොකක්ද මේකෙන් තියෙන බලපෑම දැන් මේ quality issues ආවහම? What are the consequences?
එයාලගේ brand name එකට ඒක මේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙන හින්දා.
Exactly, very good. Yes. Because end of the day, people call it not Abans McDonald's, right? They call it McDonald's. So it's an international chain. So it's not good for the franchisor, right? So because of that, they can revoke their franchising model, right? So those quality allegations are actually alleged ones. So we don't know for sure, right? But we believe, according to the news articles, that's the case, right? Because we can't accuse certain companies, but of course, that's the story that we've been seen in the news. එතකොට මම දැන් market entry strategies තුනක් ගැන කතා කරා. Exporting, licensing, franchising. හතරවෙනි එක තමයි joint ventures. මොනවාද මේ joint ventures? Joint ventures කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? What do you mean by joint ventures? Joint ventures means two or more companies, they get together, right? They combine their resources to create a new company, right? For example, Sony Ericsson, right? And then, for example, Daimler Chrysler merger, right? So likewise, there are many joint ventures where two companies are getting together to share their resources, to share their technology, right? And then the fifth one is greenfield investment. Joint venture, fifth marketing strategy එක තමයි greenfield investment. මොකක්ද මේ greenfield investment කියලා කියන්නේ? That means a company establish their operation from scratch. කාත් එක්කවත් joint වෙන්න ගියෙත් නෑ. කාගේවත් business model එකක් ගත්තෙත් නෑ. කාගේවත් trademarks ගත්තෙත් නැහැ. නිකන් just sell කරෙත් නෑ. ඒගොල්ලන් from scratch they start in a foreign country. මුලින් ඉඳලා වෙන රටක company එක පටන් ගත්තා. ඒකට තමයි කියන්නේ greenfield investment කියලා. So there are 5 marketing strategies. What are those 5 marketing strategies? What are those 5 marketing strategies?
Exporting,
Exporting, licensing,
processing, franchising,
then joint venture,
greenfield investment.
greenfield investment. Very good, right? So those are the market entry strategies, right? So now, later on, you can research and write what are the advantages of exporting, what are the disadvantages. For each of these strategies, you can decide what are the pros and cons. Now, මේ slide එක. මේකදී අපි කතා කරන්නේ what are the key considerations, right? What are the key considerations when entering into the international markets, right? So when you're entering into the international market, you have to understand what is their target market, right? So in deciding what sort of an entry strategy you want to go to, you have to understand your target market. And then your cultural awareness. What are the cultural differences? Sorry. Then pay another. Okay, right. Now you have to consider what are the cultural differences that are there, right? And then what about the regulatory compliance? And then now when you're entering into a new market, you're dealing with new set of employees. So how are you going to manage human resource management? How are you managing talent, human resources? And then how do you manage risks? Right? What are the risk management practices? And then supply chain management. When you're entering into a new market, what are the supply chain options that are there? Right? So those are the things that you have to keep in mind. Okay, now let me show you a video of a joint venture. One of the famous joint venture is this Daimler Chrysler. Have you heard of this Daimler Chrysler? Okay, stop the recording.
Recording in progress.
Imagine you've been
Recording stopped.
In these cases, 1 plus 1 almost equaled 0. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 most disastrous mergers in business history.
I did it with as much or more excitement and enthusiasm as I did on that night when I first made love some 42 years ago.
For this list, we only considered mergers where the two parties were more or less of equal size, or where the deal was at least billed as a merger of rough equals. That means we excluded acquisitions where a much larger company acquired a smaller company. Number 10, Excite and At Home. With their shared VC firm, Kleiner Perkins, concerned about increasing competition, the high-speed cable internet services of the at-home network were combined with Excite's popular search engine in the hopes of attracting millions of subscribers. The resulting $6.7 billion Excite at Home deal was one of history's biggest mergers involving two internet companies. But the NASDAQ systematic meltdown and the culture clash between Excite's dot-com bubble and At Home's more corporate and conservative cable business ultimately led to its demise. Number 9, New York Central and Pennsylvania Railroads. This unlikely merger of two rival railroad companies was their attempt to remain relevant alongside the booming auto industry. Though Penn Central became one of the United States' biggest corporations, the company couldn't survive inflation, internal conflicts, bad management, and massive cost cutting. A promised $200 million government loan never materialized, and in 1970, Penn Central filed for the biggest corporate bankruptcy to that point. Number 8, Kmart and Sears. It was businessman and investor Edward Lampert who united the struggling department store chain with the struggling discount store chain. Unfortunately, both Sears and Kmart continued to fail as Sears Holdings.
It's not that the retailer per se is weak, but if you have the greatest store and it's not near where the customers are, that's a problem.
With the subsequent recession uncovering problems like poor investment and shrinking revenues. To make matters worse, the Benz and Chrysler. One of history's biggest industrial mergers paired German car manufacturer Benz AG with American automaker Chrysler Corporation for over $36 billion. Though dubbed a merger of equals, the Daimler-Chrysler partnership found little success mixing luxury and budget-friendly cars and European and American cultures. After sales and stock prices dropped significantly, Chrysler was sold to an American private equity firm. Number 2, Seagram.
So you saw that Daimler and Chrysler, so they were going for a merger or a joint venture, but anyhow they failed. Why? Because they had two different cultures. So they were trying to combine European and American culture together, right? So because of that, they failed. But of course, there are successful joint ventures as well. And also there are failed joint ventures too, right? So with that, let's take a break and then we'll start the other sessions. So 10 minutes would be fine, right? So I think y'all can, so it's 10:30 now. So 10:40, let's meet again. Okay. Okay, so let's start again. I hope everyone's back after the break, or are y'all still on the break? So I think we are running out of time because I have to finish all this by 12. So let's start. Let me record.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so far, if you can remember, we discussed about global business strategy, right? We discussed we discussed about what is a global business strategy and what are the 4 types of global business strategies that are out there, right? And then we talked about what are the factors that influence global strategy formulation. Then we discussed about what is market entry and what are the objectives of going into different markets, right? And what are the 2 key entry decisions. And then we discussed 5 types of market entry strategies. And then we discussed about what are the key factors to consider when entering into an international market. So now let's discuss about cross-cultural management. Now, earlier I told, everywhere I emphasized on cultural differences because every country is unique in their own way because they have their own culture, right? So it's important for us to talk about this cross-cultural management, how to manage different ethnicities, different people with different beliefs, traditions, values, right? So some countries in the world are culturally similar, right? While there are some countries where there are cultural dissimilarities are there, right? So in research, scholars use this concept called cultural distance. Now, they say that some countries are there where the cultural distance is low. That means the cultural similarity is high. Now, for example, Sri Lanka and India. We have sort of the same clothing and we eat somewhat same food. I'm not telling the exact same food, but we have certain similarities, no? Sri Lanka, India, and then our South Asian countries. So that means cultural distance is low. And there are countries where the cultural distance is high. Now, for example, Sri Lanka and USA. So when we take Sri Lanka and US, the food we eat is completely different. The language we speak, the etiquettes we have, so it's completely different, right? So now if a certain international business is there who have their host country in US and their home country Sri Lanka, of course they have to have a knowledge and idea about this cultural distance, cross-cultural management. So it's important to study about cross-cultural management. Now, Disney theme park in Japan, then in France, even though Japan is culturally distant from US, Disney's value of friendliness, family orientation, smiling faces fitted well with Japanese cultural values than those of French. So sometimes, even though we say that culturally different or dissimilar, meaning we will have difficulties in grabbing others' cultures, but sometimes it's not the case. Now, here it's an example. Yeah, even though Japan and US, they have 2 different cultures. Japanese, they have the Eastern culture. US, they have the Western culture. Cultures, සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම දෙකක් වුණා. Sometimes some parts of culture fits well with the other cultures as well, right? So now let me tell you, I think I have talked about this in Unit 1 as well. This EPRG framework, I'll talk a little bit about this today as well. Now, attitude of home country. Now, what do you mean by this? Now, according to this Daniel and other authors in this research article, in this book on international business, they identified that there are 3 different attitudes or 3 different orientations of managers, right? So that means now there are certain managers or there are certain companies with ethnocentric attitude. What do you mean by ethnocentric? If you can remember, I talked about this EPRG framework. Ethnocentric, polycentric, geocentric. Can you remember I discussed in Unit 1 with examples? Can you remember? Ethnocentric, polycentric, regiocentric, geocentric. Can
Yes,
you remember
madam.
I talked? Oh, now, okay. At least one person remembers. That's good. Let's see. Okay, two people can remember. Right. Okay. So this is exactly the same. So ethnocentric attitude means they believe that their home country is the best, right? So they have this belief that the best work approaches and practices are those of the home country. They believe that our country, our home country is the best. දැන් මම කියවනේ මේ ethnocentric attitude එක අපිට හැම තැනම තියෙනවා. දැන් අපි ගත්තොත් එහෙම අපි හිතන්නේ අපි ගියපු ඉස්කෝලේ තමයි හොඳම ඉස්කෝලේ. අපි ගියපු කැම්පස් එක තමයි හොඳම කැම්පස් එක. ඕගොල්ලන්ගෙන් අහුවොත් හොඳම කැම්පස් එක මොකද්ද කියලා ඕගොල්ලන් කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? What is the best campus in Sri Lanka? What do you say? What is the best university in Sri Lanka? Akila, what do you think? Yes, Bhagya, Chabodya, go. Sachini, what do you think?
Open University.
Open University. Ah, okay. So Chamodya is saying Open University. Janan is also saying Open University. Bhagya is also saying our campus. Ah, so you all have ethnocentric attitude. Why? You believe that your campus or your university is the best, right? So similarly, these companies also think that whatever the work practices that are there in the home country, that is the best. So we can do the same in other countries as well. දැන් මෙතන එතකොට ලොකු ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙනවා. ඇයි මම ඔයගලන්ට examples උත් කියලා ඇති. දැන් Walmart උත් මෙහෙම තමයි හිතුවේ. Walmart supermarket chain. So they also believe that okay, whatever we practice in USA, let's apply to Germany. Then what happens? So they applied the same, but in Germany they failed. Why? Because German customers, they did not like whatever the practices that Walmart had. So Walmart in Germany, they failed. And then I talked another example about Disneyland, right? So US, they wanted to have the same practices in Paris, France as well, right? So what happens? So in Disney theme parks, they have a ban on alcohol. For the Disneyland park, you can't have alcohol inside the park. But in France, in their daily routine, they consume alcohol, right? So wine is actually a main part of their main culture and their main meals also. So the same practices that US had will not work in France as well, right? So this ethnocentric attitude will not come in handy for all the companies. Then the second one is polycentric attitude. Polycentric attitude means they believe that, okay, host country knows the best work approaches for running the business. So they are very democratic. ඒගොල්ලන් හිතන්නේ නැහැ. අපේ host country එකේ තියෙන practices හොඳයි. Right? So that's why a lot of companies are customizing their products. So if you can remember, I talked about the Unilever example. Rexona deodorant, they have 30 different packages, 48 different formulas. McDonald's, they have different menu options. Why? Because they have the polycentric attitude. They believe that host country has best work practices. Then geocentric attitude. What do you mean by geocentric attitude? They believe that, yes, brand consistency also should be there, right? However, certain adaptations in their elements should also be done. අර අපි කලින් කතා කරපු transnational strategy එකක් වගේ තමයි. මේ geocentric කියලා කියන්නේ. ඒගොල්ලන් කියන්නේ ඔව් consistency එකක් තියෙන්නත් ඕනේ. හැබැයි ඒත් එක්කම මේ අපේ marketing එකේ තියෙන elements ටිකක් adapt වෙන්නත් ඕනේ එක එක country wise. Right? So, for example, I told about Dove's marketing campaign. So they actually promote natural beauty, right? But we know that natural beauty differs in different countries. So they change their messaging and product lines accordingly, right? So that is ethnocentric, polycentric, and geocentric. And I talked about regiocentric as well. Regiocentric means certain unique characteristics are there for particular regions. European region එකේ ඒගොල්ලන් එක product එකක් introduce කරන්නේ. Asian region එකේ එක product එකක් introduce කරන්නේ. So they believe that regional work practices are the best. I have talked about this in unit 1, so it's just a little bit of a reminding. Okay. Now, cultural differences and management practices. Now there are reasons where, you know, certain behaviors and responses are changing in different individuals, in different countries, right? So cultural values are different because of these particular factors. Now let me take the first one, time focus. Now there are certain cultures with monochronic cultures and polychronic cultures. මේ time focus එක අපිට කොටස් දෙකකට බෙදන්න පුළුවන්. Monochronic cultures and polychronic cultures. මොකද්ද මේ monochronic cultures කියලා කියන්නේ? Monochronic cultures කියලා කියන්නේ they focus on doing one thing at a time. One task at a time. Polychronic කියලා කියන්නේ they are good multitaskers. They want to do many things at once. Right? They want to do many things at once. So there are certain cultures who practice monochronic focus, and there are certain cultures with polychronic focus as well. Right? Now, when you take time orientation, it can be past, present, and future. දැන් අපි කොහොමද කියන්නේ if a country එකක් pass කියලා කියන්නේ කොහොමද? country එකක් pass කියලා කියන්නේ ළමයි ඒගොල්ලන් ගොඩාක් priority දෙන්නේ ඉස්සර කාලේ තිබ්බ traditions වලට, values වලට. ඒක අපි කියන්නේ past orientation කියලා. So there are certain countries where they focus on present right now. They don't give priority to traditions, different cultures. දැන් ඔය eastern cultures ගොඩක්ම මේ past orientation එකේ තමයි ඉන්නේ. Western cultures ගොඩක්ම ඉන්නේ මේ present and future orientation එකේ because they always focus on the future. ඉස්සරහට අපිට introduce කරන්න පුළුවන් අලුත් technology එක මොකක්ද? How can we improve right now? And then under space, there's private and public. මොකද්ද මේ private space කියලා කියන්නේ? දැන් මේ space කියලා කියන්නේ it's the size of your comfort zone, right? Now in different cultures, they prefer that, you know, people give space to others. I mean, a lot of Western cultures, they prefer, you know, doing things alone. අපි මේක ආයෙත් කතා කරනවා මෙතන individualistic collectivistic කියලා. The මෙතනදී අපි කතා කරන්නේ මේ space එකේදී කියන්නේ they prefer private space. They don't want others to, you know, come and barge into your space. Public කියලා කියන්නේ they don't give priority to, you know, personal space, or they prefer to, you know, work together. Like Sri Lankan culture එක ගත්තොත් එහෙම are we having a private space or a public space? I hope you're all with me. දැන් මම කියපු explanation එක අනුව Sri Lankan culture, is it private space? Do we like give space to others? Or is it public? Do we not give space to others? It's mostly public. Exactly. Right? ඔයගලන්ගේ ගෙදර ගන්නකො. ගෙදර කොච්චර ඔයගලන්ට space එකක් තියෙනවද කියලා, right? Your parents and your siblings are always in your space, no? Right? So actually, we don't have private space. We are in the public space only. Then let's take, okay, we explain time orientation as well. And then there are, so when it comes to power, it can be hierarchy or equality. Now, hierarchy means they don't try to be democratic, right? They don't want, equality in their country. But there are certain countries where they give priority to equality, gender equality, right? Equality in work, that's there. And then in some countries, communication. Communication meaning it can be high context cultures or low context cultures. Communication means high context වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්, low context වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. Now, low context cultures කියලා කියන්නේ their information is, very explicit. High context culture කියලා කියන්නේ they are very implicit cultures තියෙන්නේ, right? ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් අපි දැන් සාමාන්‍ය business deal එකක් කරනකොට අපි straight to the point නම් it's low context. And if it's high context, then the message is hidden, right? So the important information is implicit, implied. And then, of course, when it comes to competition, it can be competitive or cooperative. Now, some countries are there very competitive, but some countries are there, they are very cooperative as well, right? So, likewise, different countries can have different cultural value orientations. Then, moving ahead, how to manage multicultural teams. Now, the biggest challenge is now when you have people from different countries, right? So different human resource means you should have different management practices to manage that workforce, right? And it comes with a whole set of challenges as well. Now, for example, staffing policy. Staffing policy කියලා කියන්නේ how the company can select the right person for the right job, right? So this is also stems with those ethnocentric, polycentric, geocentric methods. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි කියන්නේ there are 3 staffing policies are there. There are 3 staffing policies. Sorry. There are 3 staffing policies are there. Ethnocentric staffing policy, polycentric staffing policy, geocentric staffing policy. Ethnocentric staffing policy කියලා කියන්නේ ළමයි, they appoint people from the headquarters. දැන් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවල headquarters තිබිලා ඉන්දියාවල subsidiary එක තිබ්බොත් එහෙම ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ employees ටිකක් යවනවා ඉන්දියාවේ වැඩ කරන්න. That is ethnocentric. Polycentric means no. You hire people from India as well. Right? Geocentric කියලා කියන්නේ ඔයා කාටවත් bias වෙන්නේ නැහැ home country, host country. You give the opportunity for the right talent, right? Best global talent එකට තමයි, whether it's host country, whether it's home country, or whether it's from Europe, or whether it's from Kazakhstan, that doesn't matter as long as that's the best talent, right? That is the staffing policy. ඊට පස්සේ කොහොමද මේ expatriates manage කරන්නේ? So expatriates කියලා කියන්නේ people who go abroad to work or engage in an international assignment, right? Then මේ employees ලා අපේ රටේ employees වෙන රටවල් වලට වැඩ කරන්න ගියාම we call them expatriates. There are so many challenges. What are the challenges? What are the challenges that expatriates face? Yes, what are the challenges expatriates face?
Language problem.
Language barriers, yes, very good. What else?
Change in lifestyle.
Yes, of course, lifestyle is different.
Weather
else?
conditions.
Weather conditions are different, yes.
Culture.
So, yes,
Culture.
culture, yes. So basically, this adoption or like adjusting to the culture is very different. Very, not different, very difficult. And it's very challenging, right? So we say expatriates actually face something called culture shock. So I'm actually teaching international human resource management for our undergraduates. So there's a theory I explain to my students, which is called the U-curve theory, right? I don't know whether I've talked about this before. So when an expatriate goes to another country, what happens is that initially they will go through the honeymoon phase. Why? Because they are going into a new country. Now everything is very, now let's say a Sri Lankan going to Japan. Now everything is different and the lifestyle is different, the food is different. So you're very happy about it, right? So that is the honeymoon phase. And after some time, what happens? After certain months, you start to miss home, right? You start to miss, your friends and your parents, your whatever the practices or the culture that you were raised up in. So this phase we call the culture shock stage, right? Culture shock means now you feel depressed because you don't want to stay in this country anymore because the cultural differences are being prominent now. Then after some time, what happens is that, right, they come into an adoption stage. So adjustment stage means, or they will somehow adapt. They will find new friends in Japan. They will find what Sri Lankans living in Japan, and they will find some, expatriate bubbles or like small circles, small set of friends. Right? So that is adjustment. And then finally, they will come to a phase called mastery stage. Mastery stage means now they are all settled and they don't have any difficulties. So every expatriate, they go through these 4 stages of honeymoon, culture shock, adjustment, and mastery phase, right? So this is the universal theory that is there for the expatriates, not only expatriates. Now let's say if there's a certain student who are coming from a rural area to Colombo. So let's say she or he is coming to Colombo for a, let's say, Colombo school, or let's say Colombo University, right? So even in Sri Lanka, you can see that the cultures are different in rural areas and in urban areas as well. So this culture shift is not only apparent for the expatriates, but also people from the same country as well, right? But anyhow, this is the sort of psychological process that goes through all these people, right? So this culture shock is very crucial because companies, they need to make sure whoever we send from Sri Lanka is somehow passing this culture stage. Because if they stay in this culture stage, what happens? They will return back, right? So there's no U-curve. They will return back. So when they return back, it's a big cost, right? So when people return back to their home country, we say that it's an expatriate failure, right? So as companies, we have to make sure that people don't stay in this culture shock phase. Of course, you can't avoid this culture shock stage. It's inevitable, right? But somehow you should make sure that the person surpass through this phase and go to the next phase. Is it clear? Is it clear?
Yes, miss.
Okay, what about others?
Yes, miss.
I know it. Yes? Yes. Okay. So I know it's a big content that you have to, grab in a very short period of time, right? That is the nature of this units, right? But I hope you all understood whatever the points that I'm telling you. Please go and read it yourself. And as you can remember, in Unit 1 also I told you, make a mind map, write short notes, then it's easier for you all to study. Otherwise, there's a lot of content, no? It's difficult for you to grab an idea. Okay. Now I'll give you a small group activity. I'll give you only 5 minutes, okay? So you have to come talk to your group members and see what are the strategies to manage these cultural changes effectively. දැන් මේ culture shock කියන එක කොහොමත් එනවනේ මේ වෙන රටවල් වලට ගියාම වෙන cultures වලට ගියාම. So what are the strategies, right, as a company that you can do to manage these culture change? Right? What are the things that you can do? So talk to your group members and make a list, and then let's discuss each group. I will divide you all into I will give you only 5 minutes, okay? දැන් මෙතන මීටින් එකේ ඉන්නවා කියන්නේ Breakout room number 1.
Madam, we have noted down like to conduct awareness programs on differences in culture,
Okay, good.
training and development, peer communication,
Mhm.
leadership commitment, and conducting surveys on differences in culture and effective communication.
Okay. In terms of the company side, what you can do when you're sending expatriates?
Yeah.
Now, one thing is that you can train the expatriates, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What else?
To keep them update on consequences,
Updated, yes, of
occasional,
course.
yes,
Cultural.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. What about breakout room 2? Breakout room 2?
Madam, we noted,
Yeah.
firstly, clear communication. It helps to building a trust and clarifying the cultural changes, and training and development programs, and to minimize cultural shock behavior about the cultural advancedly, introducing new business practices, and timing of introducing changes. It will be to help prepare in advance.
Okay, right. Good. Then breakout room 3? Yes, who was there in breakout room 3? Okay, so nobody was discussing then. I can't do anything about it. Okay, then we'll move on to the next session, which is international negotiations and relationships. So as you know, when dealing with other countries, you have to have negotiations, right? So what do you mean by international business negotiations? A process of conferring or agreement with the other participants to discuss about their views, settle differences, and reaching a mutually acceptable agreement to close a deal. So of course, in businesses, negotiations are inevitable, right? Now, how does culture plays a role in this business negotiations? Is that, of course, we talked about different cultures that are there. Now, in cultures, I initially talked about different cultural values. So the communication styles differ in different cultures, right? And then the decision-making processes differs in different cultures. And then the relationship building strategies differ in different cultures. So accordingly, culture actually plays a major role in international business negotiations. Now, let me give you an example. Now, when it comes to the communication style, Western cultures, they are very direct and they are very straightforward in communication. But when it comes to these Eastern cultures, right, they are very indirect in communication. Now, we tell that we are a relationship-based culture, whereas Western cultures are more deal cultures. Why do I say so? Is because now, let's say a US person is entering into a business agreement or a negotiation with a Middle Eastern guy, right? So when they meet, their communication styles are different because USA guy wants to somehow get the deal done in a very shorter period of time. They're very direct. But Middle Eastern person, right? they are always believed and practicing way of, business dealings is that they don't straight away talk about businesses. Now, even as Sri Lankans, when we go to a certain meeting or not, we have this something called small talk, right? What is small talk? The මුලින්ම ගිහිල්ලා business ගැන කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. මුලින්ම අහන්නේ how are you? ඔයාගේ ගෙදර කට්ටියට කොහොමද? How is the country's weather? How's the country's situation? So after having some sort of small talk only, they talk about business. So this small talk is actually the point where us as Eastern cultures, we establish the trust. අපි believe කරන්නේ අර small talk එකෙන් තමයි අපිට අර trust එක build කරගන්න පුළුවන් අනිත් පාර්ශවයත් එක්ක. So this is not the practice that the Western cultures have. So of course, culture plays a big role. Why? Because when you're dealing with a Western culture, dealing with an Eastern culture, it's totally different, right? So in terms of building relationships, it's entirely different. So you have to have an idea what sort of a communication style that they prefer. And you have to adjust and adapt accordingly. Otherwise, you will not have successful negotiations, right? And then ethics and laws relating to international business negotiations. Now, there are lots of rules and laws or laws and regulations when it comes to these negotiations. Now, one law is contract law, right? Contract law is in how agreements are formed, how agreements are interpreted across different countries. Now, in different countries, they have their own legal standards, right? So they have their own interpretations of how coming into an agreement will happen, right? And somehow, in some countries, they get the help of certain international conventions like United Nations Convention on Contracts for, if you have heard of the CASG, right? So they also can be an inspiration as well. So my point is that different countries, they do have different ways of doing business. Now, when entering into a business, and let's say when closing a business also, in different countries, it differs. Now, in especially like countries like in India, closing a business, entering a business is very difficult, right? Because it takes, now even in Sri Lanka, we have to have the business registration. So entering a business is very difficult. And not only that, closing a business is also very difficult. Why? Because Sri Lankans and Indians, we have this bankruptcy law. So in order to close a business also, it's very difficult. You have to first liquidate the assets and have all these rules and regulations. Okay? So you have to have an idea about the laws that are related to this. And of course, another law is intellectual property law, right? So laws which protects trademarks, innovations, proprietary technology. So you have to be aware of these things. And then strategic alliances in international business. So strategic alliances means, now earlier I discussed joint ventures, mergers, right? Strategic alliance means collaborations between firms from different countries for mutual benefit while maintaining their independence. So strategic alliance is actually a very common form of business that companies are doing right now. Because when you merge or when you joint with another company, especially now when businesses entering into the Chinese market, earlier they had a rule that all the foreign companies coming into China, they have to partner up with a local Chinese company. So the advantage of the foreign company is that they can get local experience from the local companies, because local companies already know about their country, about their business environment, so that you can get advantages from that. And also it comes with disadvantages as well, right? But anyhow, strategic alliance is actually beneficial when entering into new markets, especially like Chinese markets, it's very profitable markets, but when to enter, you need to form a strategic alliance, right? So these partnership or strategic alliances can be in the form of joint ventures, equity partnership, contractual agreements, and all sorts of things, right? The advantages are, of course, you can share risk, you can have access to new markets, all these things are there. Okay, then moving on to the final part of today's lecture, which is crisis management and business continuity, right? Now, when it comes to businesses who are actually involved in international trade or business, right? They are being affected by many problems, many crises, right? Many disruptions. Can you tell me some crises that foreign companies in Sri Lanka had to face? What are the
Economic
crises?
crisis.
Exactly, very good. What else? What are the disruptions and crises that foreign companies in Sri Lanka had to face?
Political crisis.
Yes, political. We had during the Aragare period, we had a political turmoil. Yes. What else?
Law and regulations.
Laws and regulations. Yes. Now, the specific crisis that we were part of, disease outbreaks, COVID-19, and then we had terrorist attacks, right? So these are all crises that businesses face, right? The uniqueness of this crisis is that it's very difficult for us to predict. We can't say that, okay, tomorrow this might happen. No, it's very difficult to predict and we can't avoid them as well. Because somehow or the other, these crises affects businesses. Now, there are different types of crisis. The first one is self-inflicted crisis. Self-inflicted crisis means crisis that happens inside the organization based on how they organize their production and value chain, right? So based on the decisions that they make, they will have some consequences. Now, for example, if you find a short route in making money, of course, you will be doing unethical practices like fraud. You will be doing unethical practices like tax evasion, right? So those are what we call self-inflicted crises. ඔයාම විසින් දාගන්න කරදර ටික, right? Self-inflicted crisis. Sectoral crisis කියලා කියන්නේ the crisis which happens in a specific sector, right? And that particular sector, if a certain crisis is affected, then it affects all the firms in the industry. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදියට, if let's say for the agriculture sector, there's a certain disease spreading for the plants. So that affects the entire agricultural sector, right? Now let's say there's a certain disease that is spreading through animals. So that affects the entire industry of animal related businesses. So that is sectoral crisis, self-inflicted crisis, sectoral crisis, and then country risk. What do you mean by country risk? Country risk means there are certain risks to a particular country. It can be political risks, government policy related risks, macroeconomic risks. So those are country specific risks. And then there's another type of risk called exogenous crisis. So exogenous factors means now this can originate from natural forces or it can be from human behavior as well. Now from natural forces means that natural disasters like pandemics, hurricanes, floods, droughts, volcanic eruptions. So those can be there. Those are natural. Now, what are the man-made crises, exogenous crises that are there? Natural ones are pandemics and floods and all these things. Man-made disasters are what? What are man-made disasters? Yes, do you have an idea about man-made disasters?
Terrorism?
Sorry?
Terrorism?
Exactly. Terrorism. Yes. Terrorism, war, right? Financial crisis, because financial crisis somehow, some company or some person has to start it, no? So all these things are exogenous crisis which can happen naturally or it can be man-made as well. Now, what are now? For this crisis, it's inevitable. No? We have to somehow or the other face this crisis. Now, how can we go ahead with it? What is the crisis management that we can do? Now, in crisis management, there are different stages. The first one is we call the prodromal crisis stage. This means now the crisis, this hasn't happened yet. This is the warning stage, right? So this is actually the stage where you have to take action. You have to train employees to prevent a crisis before they occur. If you see, okay, an economic recession will happen in 2 years, now onwards you get ready, right? So that is a warning stage. Acute crisis stage means where the damage actually happens, right? So what you can do at the second stage or the acute crisis stage is you have to control the damage as much as possible, right? So managers, they are responsible of assessing how much danger exists and what can you do about it. That is the acute stage. Then you have the chronic crisis stage. Chronic crisis means now companies trying to recover, right? So this is like the cleanup phase after the crisis. The crisis එක වෙලා ඉවරයි, the aftermath, right? The cleanup. So this is actually a phase where companies has to recover, right? They have to determine what can we do about it, right? And then they have to actually reflect on what went right and what went wrong, okay? And then the fourth stage is crisis resolution. This means now the organization is back to normal. Damages are being repaired. Now they are doing well. Now in this stage, they have to think of, okay, if another crisis happens, what are the actions that we will take? So you have to come up with some proactive steps here. So these 4 stages are the stages of crisis management. Prodromal crisis, acute crisis, chronic crisis, and crisis resolution. Okay, these are the stages. So this is a whole cycle or a process that keeps on happening. What are the effective crisis protocols that you can do? Right? So in response to this crisis, what can the firms do? They can
Recording in progress.
what can the firms do? They can have different things. Now, the first thing they can do is risk assessment and scenario planning, right? So in this stage, what they have to do is they have to assess what are the risks that can be there in the future? What are the potential threats? What are the crisis scenarios in international operations, right? And you have to develop plans. You have to develop protocols, right? You need to develop backup plans. And then another suggestion is cross-functional collaboration. So you need to have collaboration and coordination among your stakeholders, like your leadership and your crisis management team. So you all have to work together, right? And make decisions in how can we overcome this crisis. And another thing is that training and preparedness, right? So you have to train your employees to, how to act when there's a crisis happening on, how to prepare ourselves. And then another suggestion is political risk insurance. Now, a lot of insurance companies, they are insuring people for the times of death, for any fire, for any accidents. So insurance are put no. Now, how can you put insurance for a political risk? Now have you heard of this concept before? Political risk insurance. Have you heard of this political risk insurance concept before? So don't you think that it's absurd and it's not impractical at all? I mean, it's not practical at all because I mean, political risk is something you can't determine now. If let's say it's a damage from fire, you can estimate. But how to estimate the damage from a political risk, right? It's you if you think about it, it seems very impractical. But actually, companies have actually insured themselves for these political risks. Now, let me give an example. Coca-Cola, they have insured their assets and operations through an organization called MIGA. You can search that. MIGA, which means Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, MIGA. So, in this organization, they have actually insured and they have put insurance for what? To safeguard their investment and to ensure that there's business continuity if there's any risk involved, right? So likewise, some companies have actually done insurance or partner up with the insurance companies in order to safeguard from these risky situations as well. So this MIGA, Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, is very popular organization where they insure these sort of unforeseeable crises. Then, what are the key components of business continuity management plan? Now you know that crisis is something we all have to face, right? So in creating a business continuity management plan, what are the things that should be there? First thing is that, as I told earlier as well, you need to have risk assessment. You need to have a thorough risk assessment. Okay, for this particular company, what are the potential threats? Okay. Now in Sri Lanka, we know we face natural disasters like floods, and then tsunamis. So we know these sort of natural disasters. So you have to assess what are the risks involved. And not only that, we have cybersecurity threats, supply chain disruptions. You have to assess what are the risks that are there. Then in your plan, you also need to have the business impact analysis. What do you mean by business impact analysis? You have to quantify, okay, what is the impact of these certain risks for our business process? What is the impact on our customers? What is the impact on our technologies? So this is important so that you can, prepare and maybe keep a buffer stock or buffer cash for these impacts. And the third thing that you need to have is comprehensive response plan. Response plan means, now after reviewing whatever the risk that you have to outline the steps that you will take. Okay? What is the protocols or what are the steps that you will take in ensuring that we have less damage? You have to have a plan. Then what is your communication strategy? Now, during a crisis, of course, the communication practices cannot be done in a normal way. So what is our backup communication method? Let's say now there's a system failure. What is the backup communication plan we have? So you need to have a communication strategy in place. Then employee training. You have to train the employee for these circumstances. And you have to always make sure that testing and maintenance are there. And then compliance of regulations are also there, right? So in a business continuity management plan, of course, these components are there. And you have to keep in mind, one of the most practical problems that they will come across is that your money will be lost, right? Your cash, your money, your funds will be lost. So it's better if you can hold cash as a buffer against these sort of shocks. Because then you know, okay, we have allocated some amount of money. Now, in accounting, we do depreciation for that now because we know this particular machine will get depreciated and we have to replace it. So you allocate some amount of money just in case something happens. So likewise, for a business also, they can have some cash as a buffer if something goes wrong. Okay. So we have a certain theory called precautionary savings hypothesis as well. So in this theory, we say that, okay, firms where they have significant cash holdings, they are the most flexible in terms of these shocks because they know that they have prepared for certain crises in the future, right? Because it's always better to have some sort of a buffer stock or buffer cash with you just in case if something happens, right? So that is about business continuity management. So far we discussed, that is the end of the lesson, by the way. So far we discussed global business strategy. What is a global business strategy? And then we talked about the integration responsiveness framework. And we talked about 4 quadrants: standardization, multi-domestic, export, and transnational strategy. Then we talked about what are the factors you have to consider in strategy formulation. Then we talked about market entry. What are the objectives? And then what are the decisions that you have to make? And what are the market entry strategies? What are the market entry strategies? What are the market?
Exporting, licensing, franchising, joint ventures, greenfield investments.
Investment, very good, right? And then we talked about what are the key factors to consider. Then we talked about cultural distance, right? And then what are the 3 attitudes that are there? Ethnocentric, polycentric, geocentric, right? And what are the different cultural values are there? And how to manage cross-cultural teams and strategies, right? And then what is a negotiation and what culture plays a role in negotiations? Then what are the laws and what are the strategic alliances? And then we talked about different types of crises, what are the stages, and what are the crisis management plans we can have. Okay. So those are the things we discussed so far. So do you have any questions? Yes, do you have any questions? Or did you understand the lesson?
Yes, madam.
Yes, ma'am. It's very clear.
Okay.
Yes, madam.
Great. So this will be my last lecture, and I think some other lecturers. So I think, okay, let me close the recording.
Recording stopped.
Right. So far, I think you got an understanding, and I think last lecture was conducted by Mr. Venukar, right? Who did the last lecture? Or is it Krishmal? Who did the last lecture on international business? No idea? Okay, all right. So this will be my last lecture, and I wish you good luck for your assignments and for your examinations as well, right? I hope you get good marks. And if you have anything, please drop an email as well. Madhavi?
එක්සෑම් එක ගැන මොන හරි ඩීටේල්ස් කියන්න කියන්නේ කොයි වගේද 2024 23 විදියටද ස්ට්‍රක්චර් එක කොයි විදියටද කියලා කියන්න පුළුවන්ද?
එක්සෑම් ස්ට්‍රක්චර් එක ගැන ඔයගලන්ට ඉස්සරහට කතා කරයි මේ යුනිට්ස් එක උඩනාට පස්සේ. මොකද අපි external visiting lecturers අනේ මං හිතන්නේ ඔයගලන්ට ඔයගලන්ගේ internal staff එකේ කවුරු හරි ඒක ගැන ඔයගලන්ට brief කරයි. Right? I'll remind Tarshika to talk about it with you. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, madam.